In Lisbon's hills, a cable snapped today. 16 souls lost when the funicular gave way. A 3-year-old pulled from the twisted steel, witness crying out of control, too real. Foreign nationals among the 20 hurt. Portugal mourns as hearts fill with dirt. The famous trams that climbed those ancient streets, now silent monuments to tragedy's beats. Breaking news across the world tonight, from Lisbon's hills to fashion's fading light. The stories that shape our human fate, in headlines bold we navigate. The world keeps turning, the news keeps burning. In every corner history's churning. Giorgio Armani's final bow has come. At 91 his elegant race is run. The suits he crafted power dressed the world. Red carpets graced where his designs unfurled. Meanwhile in Washington the orders flow. Trump renames defense to war. Don't you know? Turning back the clock to World War II, when battles raged and the world was new. Breaking news across the world tonight, from Lisbon's hills to fashion's fading light. The stories that shape our human fate, in headlines bold we navigate. The world keeps turning, the news keeps burning. In every corner history's churning. 26 nations stand with Ukraine's call, while judges block the foreign aid fall. Melania warns the robots have arrived, in this strange world where news has come alive. Macron declares a coalition strong. 26 countries can't be wrong. Troops for Ukraine when the fighting ends, while Rubio speaks of how cooperation bends. No drug lord deaths if nations play along, but cross the line and face the hammer's song. A federal judge says no to aid cuts deep, 4.9 billion that Congress chose to keep. Breaking news across the world tonight, from Lisbon's hills to fashion's fading light. The stories that shape our human fate, in headlines bold we navigate. The world keeps turning, the news keeps burning. In every corner history's churning. From Portuguese hills to political halls, the news today both rises and falls. In every story humanity shows how the wheel of history forever goes.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's news roundup. It's Thursday, September 4th, and we've got some major stories breaking around the world that are really shaking things up. Let me start with what's probably the most heartbreaking story of the day, a devastating funicular crash in Lisbon that's left Portugal in mourning. 16 people lost their lives when one of those famous cable cars that climb the city's steep hills suddenly derailed. Among the victims were several foreign nationals, and we're hearing that more than 20 others were injured, some critically. The most remarkable part of this tragedy is that a 3-year-old boy was actually pulled alive from the wreckage. Witnesses are describing the scene as completely out of control. And honestly, it's one of those accidents that just reminds you how quickly everything can change. Portugal has declared a day of mourning, and investigators are still trying to figure out exactly what went wrong with these iconic trams that have been carrying people up and down Lisbon's hills for decades. Moving to some very different news from the fashion world, we lost a true icon today. Giorgio Armani, the legendary Italian designer who basically redefined what power dressing means, has died at the age of 91. This guy was absolutely revolutionary in how he approached both men's and women's suits. Designer Paul Smith said it best when he called Armani completely radical. For decades, Armani's streamlined, elegant designs ruled red carpets around the world. He brought this incredible refinement to the power suit that just transformed contemporary fashion entirely. It's really the end of an era in the fashion industry. Now, shifting gears to some pretty significant political developments coming out of Washington. President Trump has made a pretty symbolic move by renaming the Department of Defense back to the Department of War, which was actually what it was called until shortly after World War II. It's one of those changes that really signals a shift in how this administration wants to frame military policy. Speaking of military policy, we're also seeing some interesting developments with Ukraine. French President Macron is announcing that 26 countries are now ready to send troops to help secure a post-war Ukraine ceasefire. This coalition of willing nations is apparently getting backing from the U.S. as well, with Trump's support expected to be formalized in the coming days. It's a significant international commitment that could really shape how any potential peace deal gets implemented. On the domestic front, there's been a notable legal pushback against some of Trump's policies. A federal judge has blocked the administration's attempt to cut $49 billion in foreign aid, expressing what sources describe as deep skepticism about whether the executive branch has the power to withhold funds that Congress has already appropriated. It's one of those constitutional separation of powers issues that we're likely to see more of. And here's something that sounds almost like science fiction. First Lady Melania Trump has been making some pretty interesting observations about artificial intelligence and robotics. She's been warning that the robots are here and talking about both the wonders and dangers of modern technology. It's fascinating to see someone in her position really engaging with these big technological questions that are going to shape our future. Finally, Secretary of State Rubio made some interesting comments about the administration's approach to drug policy internationally. He's basically saying that the U.S. won't target drug smugglers for elimination if their countries cooperate with American counter-narcotics efforts. It's a carrot-and-stick approach that draws a pretty clear line between nations that want to work with us and those that don't. That's your news roundup for this Thursday evening. From tragic accidents in Portugal to fashion legends passing away, from military policy changes to international coalitions, it's been a day that really shows how connected and complex our world has become.